Jim Morrison was born on December 18, 1964, in Harris, Scotland. At some point, he met Victoria Payton, and they married in August of 1988. In 1991, 26-year-old Jim was living in Martlet Court and worked as a detective constable police officer. Those who knew him well said he was very dedicated to his job and the community and was said to be a very talented detective. Unfortunately, in December of 1991, he had been working on a case that involved a purse-snatching ring that consisted of at least 3 thieves, and his passion for that case would ultimately lead to a horrible tragedy. On Friday, December 13, 1991, he went to meet colleagues for drinks at the Nell Gwyn Tavern. After leaving to meet his wife, he walked past the Maple Leaf pub, caught one of the purse snatchers in the act, and began chasing him. The man pulled a knife and warned Jim that he would hurt him, but he was unfazed, threw off his coat and jacket, and continued to chase the suspect. Unfortunately, since he was off duty, he was also unarmed and in plain clothes. Bystanders helped block the suspect's path, and he eventually became cornered in Montreal Place. That's when a struggle ensued and ended with Jim being stabbed 3 times. The suspect was then able to flee, never to be seen again. Sadly, Jim did not survive his injuries. The suspect was described as being of Algerian or North African descent, about 5 foot 10 inches tall, and in his late 20s. He had a medium build and was clean-shaven, with dark hair that had distinctive tight curls at the front. They also believe he is part of the purse-snatching gang that was stealing bags from pubs across the West End in London. 30 years after his untimely death, he was posthumously awarded the Queen's Gallantry Medal for his exemplary act of bravery. Unfortunately, the killer has never been caught, and as of September 2024, this case remains unsolved. Lisa Michelle Stebic was born on May 19, 1969, in Park Ridge, Illinois. After graduating from Liberty High School, she enrolled at Southern Illinois University before transferring to Kendall College, where she earned a degree in hotel and restaurant administration, or what they now call hospitality management. Lisa was described as a very vibrant individual who was full of life and had an infectious laugh. At some point, she met Craig Stebic, and they married in Jamaica on April 6, 1993. Unfortunately, it turned out to be a marriage from hell. A couple of years later, in 1995, he was charged with 2 felonies for unlawful use of a weapon after police stopped him about 1,000 feet from a school. Inside his Toyota pickup truck, they found a 10-gauge double-barrel shotgun, a .44 Magnum semi-automatic pistol, a Ruger Mini 14, and an AK-47. He was also charged with 4 misdemeanor counts of unlawful use of a weapon. In March of 2002, Lisa had enough and wanted out of the relationship, so she began petitioning the court to evict him from her home. She also filed for divorce. Unfortunately, they reconciled, and by 2006, they were still together. Their relationship remained tumultuous, and one time in October of 2006, the police had to be called after a verbal dispute got out of hand. However, there was no physical violence, and no one was arrested. In January of 2007, after 14 years of marriage, Craig filed for divorce, but once again, they continued living together, at least for a couple of months. Craig said in the divorce papers that the two were no longer speaking and were living in separate areas of the house. He was also seeking joint custody of their children, now ages 10 and 12. Unfortunately, according to those who knew Lisa, she was very afraid of Craig and had started taking counseling sessions at a center for battered women. She was also looking forward to her new life as a single mother, but would sadly never get the chance. At the time, Lisa was working in the cafeteria at Lincoln Elementary School, while Craig had recently lost his private investigator job. This, unfortunately, led to them having financial problems. Over 4 months later, on April 29, 2007, Lisa told her friend and neighbor, Laurie Bingenheimer, that Craig had threatened to kill her and asked if she could send the kids over if things got out of control that night. Thankfully, it didn't, and the following day, she contacted her attorney for help in getting Craig evicted while the divorce proceedings were ongoing. She said the reason was because Craig was unnecessarily relentless, cruel, inconsiderate, domineering, and verbally abusive toward her, and said his behavior was taking a toll on the children. After working that day at the school, she left between 2 and 2:30 p.m. She then went to the Jimmy John's on Route 59 to pick up her usual, a Turkey Tom sandwich. She then ran a few errands and picked her son up from Walker's Elementary School and arrived home around 4 p.m. After that, she was never heard from again. The following day, on May 1st, Lori called Lisa's job to see if they had seen her, but they had not. She then went and spoke with Craig, who also claimed he hadn't seen her. At that point, she called the police and reported her missing. Investigators then spoke with Craig, who said that the last time he saw Lisa was on the 30th at 6 p.m. He also offered up his own theory as to what happened to her. He said he believed she had either voluntarily left or was forcefully taken from their home while he was working in the backyard. Conveniently, he had sent the kids to a nearby Walgreens to buy some candy, and she disappeared while they were gone. However, her vehicle was still in the garage, but her cell phone and purse were missing. After the kids returned home, Craig immediately took them to Target to allegedly buy a birthday gift. Lisa also missed her workout class that night at North Plainfield High School, which she regularly attended. Investigators searched their home multiple times and confiscated both vehicles. Inside Craig's 2002 Chevy S10 pickup, they found a tarp with blood on it that he said was from a deer. However, tests showed it actually belonged to Lisa. They also seized 24 of his firearms. A year later, both his truck and firearms were returned to him after his attorney filed a motion with the court. They also searched the family's cabin, but nothing was found. During that time, Craig refused to cooperate or let his children be interviewed. He was then named the sole person of interest. He then had the court dismiss his divorce filing. While police believe Lisa was likely murdered that night, a grand jury failed to indict him. However, he was charged with a misdemeanor for threatening Lori. Interestingly, 2 months after Lisa disappeared, reporter Amy Jacobson, who worked for NBC5, was working on Lisa's case and was caught on video in a bikini at Craig's pool and subsequently fired. CBS 2, a rival of the network, had aired the footage that led to her losing her job of 10 years. Amy claimed that Craig's sister had invited her and her children to the house to use the pool and discuss the case with family members. She then sued CBS and their affiliate WBBM for defamation and invasion of privacy, but lost her case. 9 years after Lisa disappeared, in 2016, Craig sold the home for $259,000 when other homes in the neighborhood were selling for $350,000 to $450,000. It's unclear why he sold the house for that amount. Lisa is between 5 foot and 5 foot 2 inches and weighs around 125 pounds, with brown hair and brown eyes. She also has a linear scar on her lower abdomen and a tattoo of a rose on her ankle, as well as a pink heart on her stomach and a butterfly with her children's names, Zach and Lexi, on her back. Sadly, as of September 2024, Lisa has not been found, and this case remains unsolved. Michael Edwin Hearon, who went by Mike, was born on June 15, 1957, and grew up in Maryville, Tennessee. After graduating from Lanier High School, he got a job with the Park Service trimming trails. He then started his own construction business called Michael Hearon Builders, which went on to be very successful. Mike was described as a family man who loved the outdoors, especially working on his farm. He was also known for clearing trails in the Great Smoky Mountain National Park and had participated in rescue efforts. In 2008, 51-year-old Mike was splitting his time between 2 homes, his condo in Maryville and his 100-acre farm in Happy Valley, about 30 minutes away. On Saturday, August 23rd, he called and left his son Matt a message saying he was heading out to the farm for the weekend, which he typically did. Since he didn't have service out there, he always made sure they knew where he was. Before going, he stopped by his son Andy's home, picked up a mower, and loaded it on his trailer. He then left and passed Andy on his way out. He was then seen by neighbors at the home site at 11 a.m., driving his green four-wheeler Yamaha Wolverine ATV. He waved at the neighbors and continued on his way. Sadly, that was the last time he was ever seen or heard from again. The following day, his parents, who lived about 5 minutes from his home on the 100 acres, walked over to his house and knocked on the door, but there was no answer. They also noticed his truck with the trailer and mower still attached. Around 2 p.m. that day, Alma called Matt and Andy to express her concerns about Mike, but they figured he was probably just busy doing stuff on the farm, like tending to the 40 head of cattle. By Monday morning, when Mike's mother, Alma, was still unable to find him, she called Matt and Andy again. This time, their concerns were raised, and they began looking for their father, starting at his condo. However, nothing appeared missing or out of place, so they left and headed for the farm. While on the way, Alma called again and said that Mike's truck was still parked by the house, and the ATV was still in the front yard. When Matt and Andy arrived, they realized the mower had never been unloaded and the grass was unmowed. As for the truck, it was unlocked, the windows were rolled down, and his keys and wallet were still inside. They also realized that the ATV Alma saw was old and that their father's green four-wheeler Yamaha Wolverine ATV was missing. At that point, they called 911. When the police arrived, they figured all they needed to do was find the ATV and they would find Mike. More than 100 law enforcement, emergency personnel, and volunteers began searching the 100 acres for him. Unfortunately, it had been raining, possibly washing away any tracks or scents that might have led them to him. On Tuesday, August 26, around noon, his four-wheeler was discovered on Happy Valley Loop, about a mile from his home. A friend of Mike's had found it by chance, backed into some bushes on a steep hill. The keys were still in the four-wheeler, and the ignition was turned off, which Mike always did, but he was still nowhere to be found. Interestingly, this location was not on his property, but on a road he rarely went down. Because of that, his sons believe their father's disappearance involved foul play. So, what really happened to Mike? His family said he was acting normal before his disappearance and didn't seem depressed. He had no known enemies and was generally well liked by just about everyone. Mike is described as 5 foot 10 inches with an appendix scar and a scar between the thigh and knee. He also has one foot that is smaller than the other. He also has a tattoo on his lower back and was likely wearing a faded red t-shirt with khaki cargo shorts and sandals on the day he disappeared. Sadly, as of September 2024, Mike has never been found, and this case remains unsolved. Paula Lee Ellis was born in Birmingham, Alabama on May 7, 1954, and later moved to Miami, Florida. After high school, 18-year-old Paula enrolled at the University of Alabama in Tuscaloosa and moved into the Martha Parham Hall dorm. Unfortunately, in the spring of 1973, a horrible tragedy would occur. On Friday night, April 20th, 18-year-old Paula rode her bike around campus, visiting with friends as she usually did, before returning to her dorm room. Just after midnight, she left again and cycled over to a concert called the Spring Rave Up, where she was excited to see the Nitty Gritty Dirt Band play, along with 6,000 other students. When she failed to return to her dorm, her friends spent the next day searching for her with no luck. At 9 a.m. on Easter Sunday, when there was still no sign of her, her friends reported her missing. The 2 investigators who looked at the case initially assumed she had stayed the night with a friend after the concert. However, that theory was quickly put to rest when her purse and the contents were found scattered on a bridge on Flatwoods Road in Northport. One of the other officers who arrived at the scene decided to walk up the road towards Hicks Barbecue, about 100 yards away. That's when he found Paula's partially nude body lying in a ditch about 7 miles from her dorm. She was only wearing her knit top, and some of her other clothes were lying on the ground nearby. An autopsy determined she had been strangled to death, but no signs of sexual assault were found. As for her time of death, it was estimated to be between 1 and 4:30 on Saturday morning. Investigators theorized that her killer had kidnapped her and forced her into their vehicle before strangling her to death. As for her bike, it was later found in a bike rack on the quad. Due to 3 agencies being involved in the case, it led to confusion, and her clothes were ultimately misplaced and have never been found. By November of that year, the Tuscaloosa County Homicide Unit was created. One of the 2 potential suspects was Doug Faust, a defensive lineman for the Alabama football team, who had repeatedly been asking Paula out even though she had a boyfriend. However, Faust was ruled out after passing a polygraph and providing a solid alibi. On the night of the murder, he was on a date with a teacher from Gordo High School, and she corroborated that. Even though he was cleared as a suspect, Paula's roommate wasn't convinced and said he had called the dorm room phone 3 times on the night Paula disappeared. Paula's boyfriend was also looked at, but ultimately ruled out as a suspect. The next suspect was a native of the area named Charles Michael Brewer. Investigators learned about Brewer after he pleaded guilty to attempted murder in an unrelated case. For that crime, he had beat up a woman and almost choked her to death. He was also a closer fit to Paula's killer's profile than Faust was. Then, in 1981, he was convicted of murdering a disabled woman by the name of Diana Lynn Holland. He had strangled her and dumped her body in a rural area, and just like Paula, there was no obvious signs of sexual assault. Brewer was described as a natural-born killer, and to this day remains the most likely suspect, but there has never been enough evidence to arrest him. At some point, Paula's roommate was hypnotized, hoping she might recall some helpful information from the night of the murder. She said that Paula was last seen outside her dorm room around 2 a.m. and was with a group of people who were heading to a party at a park with a lake. Unfortunately, the information was very spotty, and the group of people she was seen with have never been identified. As for the main suspect, Brewer, he is currently serving a life sentence for Diana's murder, but hasn't been charged in Paula's case, which, as of September 2024, remains unsolved. Lola Ada Celli was born in Italy in 1922 and moved with her family to the United States when she was 9 years old. After graduating from high school, she enrolled at Ohio State University. She was a very intelligent person and could speak 5 languages. She was also an honor student and a member of the Spanish Club, the French Club, and the Education Council. After graduating from college, she got a job as a home economics teacher at West Mansfield High School in Mansfield, Ohio. On February 22, 1946, 24-year-old Lola traveled an hour to visit her parents at their home in Grandview Heights, Ohio. This was not her first time spending the weekend with her parents, and we know that because it legitimately made the news. The following day, on February 23rd, while still at her parents' home, she decided to take a bus to downtown Columbus to do some shopping. She had $60 in her purse and planned to visit a particular store and open an account, but she never arrived. A neighbor of her parents by the name of Harry Lane also boarded the same bus Lola was supposed to take, but he said she wasn't on it. Sadly, after leaving her parents' home, she was never seen or heard from again. If she never made it to the bus, then she might have been abducted while walking to the bus station. When she didn't return home, her parents reported her missing. That's when a witness came forward and reported seeing a woman matching Lola's description arguing with a man in a car along Olentangy River Road on the day she disappeared. The car was a red coupe and had a broken window. During the argument, the woman kicked her feet and sent one of her red shoes flying out the window. Authorities searched the area but were unable to find it. Later that day, an employee at a gas station on North High Street, about a mile from where they were last seen, told police that the man had stopped and bought $2 in gas. He said he paid with a $5 bill and drove away without waiting for his change. The woman he was seen with earlier was still in the car. A massive search, including 175 high school seniors, combed the Grandview and Upper Arlington neighborhoods, looking for clues to her whereabouts, but nothing was found. One theory that police floated at the time was that she had amnesia due to the stress of her teaching job. Allegedly, she had become extremely nervous and appeared worried about her teaching duties before going missing. Unfortunately, the Marshal of Marble Cliff, which is located about a mile from Grandview Heights, told the chief of police that he had made contact with Lola and she was still alive and apparently didn't want to be found. Because of that, the Grandview Heights police chief closed the case in 1956. Lola's family didn't believe this and said the police chief hadn't even contacted them in 10 years. Sadly, Lola's parents died without ever finding out what happened to her. Her father in 1958 and her mother in 1985. Lola was described as 5'4", 115 pounds, wearing a gray Indian lamb fur coat, a gray hat, an aqua-colored dress with red stripes, and red suede slip-on shoes with Cuban heels. As of September 2024, Lola has never been found, and this case remains unsolved.